Dietrich Bonhoeffer, born on February 4, 1906, in Wrocław, Poland, found a curiosity in God upon the death of his brother Walter in World War I. In his thesis at Humboldt University, he declared that Christ is community with us, and God is with everyone. This sense of community guided Bonhoeffer's teachings and led his students and colleagues around the world to stand with him to resist Hitler. As Adolf Hitler rose to power during the early 1930s, Dietrich Bonhoeffer attended Union Theological Seminary in New York. Studying under Reinhold Niebuhr, he learned that the purpose of religion is to change the world for better. At Harlem Abyssinian Baptist Church, Bonhoeffer learned that the separate but equal social opinion of blacks in the United States was similar to the anti-Jewish social opinion in Germany. From 1933 to 1935, Bonhoeffer and Hitler led their followers in two noticeably different ways. 2 days after Hitler was elected Chancellor in January 1933, Bonhoeffer spoke on national German radio and warned the German people that there was only one Führer, and that Führer is Jesus Christ. Before Bonhoeffer could conclude his address, the Nazi Party ended the broadcast due to Bonhoeffer's involvement with the Bekennete Kirche that opposed the Nazi takeover of the German Protestant Church. When Aryan legislation was passed, depriving Jews of citizenship rights, Bonhoeffer published an article named The Church and the Jewish Question in June 1933, which asked the Church to stand with the Jews and to stop Hitler. He also sent a telegram to an ecumenical organization in Switzerland in September 1933, stating, Aryan paragraph now in effect. Please work out memorandum against this and inform press at once. In 1934, Hitler increased his power by creating the office of Führer and Reich Chancellor, allowing himself utmost control over all of Germany and transforming the Christian Church into the Reich Church. In response, Bonhoeffer and his colleague Karl Barth released the Barmen Declaration, which asked Christians to oppose pro-Nazi German Christianity. At the Fano Conference in Denmark, he stated, If you are going to win a war, you win through God, not through weapons. And, referring to the defeat of Hitler, Bonhoeffer insisted, What are we waiting for? The time is late. In 1935, at the Nuremberg rally of the Nazi Party, Hitler introduced the Nuremberg Laws, which removed all Jewish influences from Aryan society. In contrast, Bonhoeffer wrote the book The Cost of Discipleship, in which Bonhoeffer suggests that when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. At Finkenwalde, a seminary associated with the Bekennete Kirche, Bonhoeffer, Karl Barth, and Martin Niemöller trained students for ministry during that time, knowing they were under constant surveillance. The increased pressure on anyone opposed to Hitler became intense. As a result, Karl Barth was sent back to Switzerland in 1935, Bonhoeffer was forced out of his teaching position at the University of Berlin in 1936, and the Gestapo closed Finkenwalde in August 1937.
I mean, there's a lot of qualities of leadership that he had. That's why he's, so well known and revered by many people, is because he was a good leader. And I think part of it is that he had integrity, what he stood for and what he saw as important in his life and in his faith. He sought after and he made it known, and he didn't back down from those things when the Nazi regime was pushing up against him and that kind of stuff. So I think he had a lot of integrity.
In 1939, Bonhoeffer's friends and family suggested that he go to London and New York for his safety. However, he left New York shortly after arriving because he realized it was a mistake to leave Germany. He could not ask his followers to stand against the Nazis if he did not as well.
But he only stayed about 9 months, and he realized he needed to be back with the German people. He knew that it might cost him his life. It would be a lot easier to live in America. But he thought he should go back, and that very act of returning to Germany was an inspiration for people. They thought, wow, this guy is very public in his denunciation of the Nazis. He's willing to risk his life to be in his homeland. And I think that caused a lot of people to respect him. A lot of people were quiet in those days, and they didn't want to say too much for fear of getting in trouble. But I think he had a lot of respect among a lot of people for that sacrifice.
Upon his return in 1939, until his arrest in 1943, Bonhoeffer was a double agent for the Abwehr, a German military organization. To the Reich, it appeared that Bonhoeffer was using his ecumenical connections to advance Reich anti-Jewish policies. However, he was really using his connections to help the resistance movement. During this time, Bonhoeffer began writing his book Ethics, in which he criticized the church for the lack of support given towards the Jews. On April 5, 1943, Bonhoeffer was arrested and imprisoned at Tegel Prison for taking part in a conspiracy to assassinate Hitler. While in prison, he wrote hundreds of letters to family and followers to continue living a life devoted to God. He was transferred to Flossenburg concentration camp in February 1945, where he was executed on April 9. Bonhoeffer's last words are believed to have been, "This is the end, for me, the beginning of life." Hitler may have stopped Bonhoeffer the man, but he did not stop his impact throughout the course of history. On April 27, 1950, the Synod of Evangelical Church in Germany, at Berlin-Weissensee, proclaimed, "We state that by omission and silence, we became implicated before the God of mercy in the outrage which has been perpetrated against the Jews by people of our nation."
People quote Bonhoeffer all the time because he had these really memorable things. He said what he believed and what he stood for very well and very eloquently, and I think
the translations of Bonhoeffer's writings, both favorable and non-favorable, are reasons why his words continue to be discussed today. The Lutheran Church in East Germany recognized Bonhoeffer's martyrdom, while the Lutheran Church in West Germany was conflicted about Bonhoeffer being a martyr when he participated in the assassination attempt against Hitler. Bonhoeffer's legacy is witnessed in relationships between his friends Karl Barth, Eberhard Bengthy, and Martin Luther King Jr. In a sermon titled "Christ is the Center of Our Faith," inspired by Bonhoeffer's Christ the Center lecture, King preached that we need to live a life with the responsibility that corresponds with Christ. If your opponent has a conscience, then follow Gandhi and nonviolence. But if your enemy has no conscience, like Hitler, then follow Bonhoeffer. Rabbi A. James Rudin, director of the National Interreligious Affairs of the American Jewish Committee, believes that it took the Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, and the Watergate scandal for American leaders to take Bonhoeffer's words seriously. Martin Marty, a Bonhoeffer biographer, believes that Bonhoeffer's philosophy provoked activism in the Civil Rights Movement and the anti-apartheid movement.
Same, and I think Bonhoeffer would just be hammering us for complacency, and our apathy and all the ways we turn our heads against the suffering of the world. He does in his letters still, and if he was alive, he would just be doing it on Twitter, right? I bet, do you think he would tweet? Probably.
Bonhoeffer may have had Adolf Hitler as an enemy, but he was an inspiration to his followers for his sacrifice. Accurate translations of Bonhoeffer's books, driven by the International Bonhoeffer Society, allow him to be more influential today than when he was alive. No one will truly know the meaning of Bonhoeffer's unfinished works or what he would have said about the events happening in our world today. But one thing is clear. Bonhoeffer believed that if people put God and community first, above themselves, this world would be a better place.